When my mother was rushed to the emergency room, my husband Ethan was out in a flower field taking photos with his student Luna. He not only missed my mother's final moments, but he also had no idea that just 3 days earlier I had miscarried our baby. Our 10-year marriage was nothing but a game to him. It wasn't until I shattered his hypocritical facade that he finally understood. Some things once broken can never be pieced back together again. Mrs. Cole, your mother's condition is critical. She's in the emergency room. You need to come to the hospital right away. The head nurse's urgent voice pierced through the phone like an ice pick to my eardrum. I stumbled out of the house, my mind completely blank except for those haunting words. Condition is critical. My car sped down the street as my hands trembled against the steering wheel. I needed Ethan. I needed my husband. I dialed his number. It rang for what felt like forever before he finally answered. Ethan, mom's in the ER. Get to Central Hospital now. My voice broke as I choked on my words. There was a few seconds of silence before his characteristically calm, almost impatient voice came through. I'm in the middle of an important international conference. I can't leave right now. You go ahead and keep me updated. Important? More important than mom's life? She was your mentor. I practically screamed. Ava, don't be unreasonable. I really can't talk right now. He paused, his tone carrying a hint of perfunctory comfort. I'll wrap up as soon as I can and head over. How soon is soon? Beep, beep, beep. He'd hung up. I stared at my phone screen, which clearly displayed the call duration. 23 seconds. Outside my window, neon lights blurred into a surreal kaleidoscope of colors. An icy chill spread from my heart to my limbs. Important international conference. My fingertips trembling, I checked Ethan's WhatsApp last seen status. Just now. Then I opened his Instagram. The latest post shared 5 minutes ago. Location: sunflower field on the outskirts of town. In the photo, Ethan wore the white shirt I had meticulously ironed. He was standing slightly sideways, his handsome face adorned with a gentle smile, sunlight bathing him like a deity. Next to him, nestled close, was a young pretty girl in a canary yellow dress, her smile radiant. His star pupil Luna Vance. The caption read, capturing summer exclusive moments. At Luna Vance. Below it, Luna had immediately responded with a heart emoji. In that moment my world completely collapsed. So this was his important international conference. A date with his female student. While my mother's life hung in the balance when I needed him most. My stomach churned violently. I slammed on the brakes, doubled over the steering wheel and dry heaved, but nothing came up except bitter acid and tears of despair. Mentor? Important conference. How ironic. I staggered into the hospital corridor outside the emergency room. The doctor emerged exhausted, shaking his head at me. I'm sorry. We did everything we could. I collapsed to the floor, my consciousness seeming to separate from my body. The comforting words and cries around me faded into indistinct background noise. Ethan never showed up. In the days that followed, I moved like a marionette, handling my mother's funeral arrangements alone. Choosing a cemetery plot, organizing the memorial service, notifying relatives and friends. Each task felt like torture on my raw nerves. I sent him countless messages and made endless calls that went unanswered or were abruptly disconnected. On the rare occasion he picked up, he would hastily say he was busy before disappearing again. In his text messages he dismissively wrote, "Sorry Ava, the conference got extended unexpectedly. I've booked a flight back for the day after tomorrow." The day after tomorrow. The funeral was tomorrow. I stared at the cold words on my phone screen, too drained even to cry anymore. Nothing hurts more than a dead heart, so this is what it feels like. I didn't need him anymore. From the moment he chose to embrace another woman in that sunflower field, I stopped needing him. On the day of the funeral, a steady drizzle fell from the sky. I stood numbly before the memorial hall in my black attire, mechanically accepting condolences from family and friends. Where's Ethan? Haven't seen him around, a relative quietly asked. He's away on business. An important academic conference abroad. He couldn't make it back in time, I replied evenly, my voice betraying no emotion. Academic conference? At a time like this? Wasn't he your mother's most accomplished student? If it weren't for your mother fighting to keep him at the university, where would he be today? The relative's voice was filled with disapproval and contempt. I tried to force a smile but couldn't manage even a convincing one. Yes, his mentor's funeral, and yet he was abroad for an important academic conference. No one knew that abroad actually meant a sunflower field just a few dozen miles away. That the academic conference was nothing more than a romantic date with his young female student. Raindrops hit my face cold and piercing. I looked up at the gray sky and suddenly felt that my mother's passing might be a kind of release for me too. At least she wouldn't have to see how the student she had been so proud of was treating her daughter. After the funeral, life seemingly returned to a superficial normalcy. Ethan finally returned, travel-worn from abroad. He looked somewhat fatigued with faint shadows under his eyes. He entered the house, took off his jacket, casually tossed it onto the sofa and asked in his usual tone, "Is there any porridge? My blood sugar's low. I'm feeling a bit dizzy." I looked at this man whom I had loved and cared for over 10 years. 10 years. More than 3600 days and nights. I remembered all his preferences, knew his stomach was sensitive and prepared warm porridge for him every morning. Knew his voice strained from teaching too much and always kept throat lozenges in his bag. Knew about his mild germophobia and kept our homes spotlessly clean. And what about him? He didn't even remember that yesterday was our wedding anniversary. No, perhaps he did remember. Because last night my phone received a bank transfer notification. $5200 from Ethan Cole. No wishes, no message, just cold numbers. This morning the doorman called to tell me I had a delivery. A bouquet of roses with a card that read, "Happy Anniversary," without even a signature. Probably handled by his secretary. What a bitter contrast. I once believed our love was unbreakable, that he was the man who would forever hold me in the palm of his hand. But reality had slapped me hard in the face. "No porridge," I answered flatly, my voice unervingly calm. "There's bread and milk in the fridge." He frowned slightly, seemingly displeased with my negligence, but said nothing and headed straight for the kitchen. He didn't ask how I'd been these past few days, didn't ask if my mother's funeral had gone smoothly, didn't even look at me. As if I were just an insignificant fixture in this house. He emerged from the kitchen with a glass of milk in hand and looked at me. "Ava, have you been acting strange lately? Your mood seems off." I looked at him and suddenly found it laughable. My mother had died. My husband was out with another woman when I needed him most. I had handled all the funeral arrangements alone, and now he was asking if I was acting strange? "Ethan," I spoke, my voice unnaturally clear, "let's get a divorce." Ethan froze mid-sip. He set the glass down, giving me that look reserved for unreasonable children. "Ava, stop this nonsense. I know you're upset about your mom's passing, but don't joke about divorce." "I'm not joking." I met his eyes unflinchingly, each word deliberate. "I'm serious. I'll have the divorce papers ready soon." His brows furrowed, voice laced with obvious displeasure. "What's gotten into you? Just because I missed the funeral?" I explained that it was an important academic conference critical for my tenure evaluation. "Tenure evaluation?" I laughed coldly. "More important than your mentor's funeral? More important than your wife? Can you be reasonable for once?" His volume increased, clearly finding me irrational. "Sometimes it's impossible to balance work and family perfectly. Can't you cut me some slack?" Cut him slack. I'd been cutting him slack for years. Preparing porridge for him daily, never disturbing his late-night work, accepting his occasional late returns and business dinners. I'd accommodated everything only to discover him flirting with another woman in a flower field while missing my mother's funeral. I was exhausted. "I'm done being reasonable, Ethan." I closed my eyes wearily. "I just want a divorce." He probably thought I was still upset and decided not to pursue the topic. He just waved his hand dismissively. "We'll talk when you've calmed down. I'm tired and going to bed." Watching him walk away without hesitation, my heart plummeted. He didn't care why I wanted a divorce or about my pain and desperation. He just thought I was losing it or being dramatic. I thought Ethan would at least be more discreet after I mentioned divorce. I was wrong. A few days later the doorbell rang. Expecting a delivery, I opened the door to find a young face wearing a slightly confrontational expression. Luna Vanfe. She wore a pretty floral dress, impeccable makeup, and carried what looked like an expensive handbag. "Hi, I'm Ethan's student, Luna." She flashed me a sweet smile, though her eyes held undisguised scrutiny and hostility. "I'm here to pick up something." Ethan said. "It's in his study." I blocked the doorway, making no move to let her in. What exactly? I asked coldly. Some personal items. She deliberately kept it vague, glancing inside with a territorial air. Ethan said it's in the second drawer of his desk. Ethan's study was off limits to everyone except me. He never allowed anyone inside, let alone access to his drawers. Yet now he'd sent this girl to retrieve so-called personal items. This was nothing short of blatant provocation and humiliation. In that moment, all the hurt, anger, and despair bottled up inside erupted like a volcano. I looked at this young, ambitious girl trying to take over my place and smiled. Ethan's student? I repeated, my tone dripping with sarcasm. The same student who accompanied him for academic exchanges in sunflower fields? Or perhaps the one who attended international conferences with him during his mentor's funeral? Luna's smile froze, panic flashing across her face before she regained composure, even becoming somewhat arrogant. So what if I was? Old news. If you can't keep your man interested, you should gracefully step aside instead of clinging on. It's pathetic. Old news. I stepped closer, staring directly into her eyes. Compared to a homewrecker using her youth to climb the ladder, I'd say you're more pathetic. You think he loves you? He betrayed me for you today. Tomorrow he'll discard you for someone younger and prettier. You're just one of his many students. You're lying. Luna, stung by the truth, grew agitated. Ethan loves me. He says there's nothing between you two anymore. Just obligation. Obligation. I scoffed. So that justified him enjoying my care for 10 years, then canoodling with you while my mother was dying? Luna Vance, you're either stupid or wicked. No, you're both. Wagging your tail like a dog waiting for scraps from its master. How dare you insult me? Luna was completely enraged, raising her hand to slap me. I was prepared, grabbing her wrist and delivering a resounding slap across her face instead. The sharp sound echoed in the quiet hallway. Luna held her cheek, staring at me in disbelief, eyes filled with fury and humiliation. You hit me. Yes, I did. I pulled out my phone, recording her disheveled state. That's exactly what shameless homewreckers deserve. What, going to report me to Ethan? Go ahead. Let everyone see how his pure and innocent female student came to his wife's home to flaunt herself only to be put in her place. In the video, she was clutching her swollen cheek, hair a mess, eyes terrified. Delete it. Delete that now, she screamed, lunging for my phone. I stepped back, regarding her coldly. Get out. Disappear from my sight right now. Otherwise, I won't hesitate to post this video on the university forum or send it directly to Ethan's department head. Guess what happens to your promising future, then? Seeing the resolve and ruthlessness in my eyes, Luna finally felt fear. She shot me a venomous glare, clutching her face as she fled down the stairs. Watching her retreat in panic, I felt no triumph, only endless fatigue and desolation. What was the point? I'd chased away a fly but couldn't change this marriage that had long since rotted. Sure enough, my phone rang shortly after. It was Ethan. Before I could speak, his voice came through, barely containing his anger. Ava, what did you do to Luna? She called me crying, saying you hit her, insulted her, and threatened her with a video. Leaning against the cold wall, listening to his accusatory tone, I felt my heart turning to ice. So? I asked calmly. She came to my home to provoke me. Was I supposed to welcome her with a smile and offer her tea? She was just picking something up. Did you have to be so harsh? She's just a student. Ethan's voice was full of reproach and protectiveness toward Luna. A student? One who freely enters your study for personal items? One who accompanied you in flower fields while your wife's mother was dying. I questioned each word deliberately, my voice quiet but powerful. Silence from the other end. After several seconds, Ethan responded, sounding somewhat deflated. Still, you shouldn't have hit her. But I did, I admitted frankly. Are you going to seek justice for her? Call the police. Report it to university leadership. Can't you stop being so confrontational? His tone was full of exhaustion and impatience. Can we please keep innocent people out of our problems? Innocent? Luna Vance was innocent? What about me? What about my deceased mother? What about our unborn child who never had a chance to live? I couldn't listen to his twisted justifications anymore. Ethan Cole, I cut him off, my voice cold as ice. If you called just to seek justice for your student, Then we have nothing more to discuss. With that I hung up. This time I didn't cry. I just felt a hollow space where my heart should be with cold wind whistling through. Ethan came home very late that night, his face dark with anger. As soon as he walked in, he threw his coat onto the sofa and demanded, "Ava, what exactly are you trying to do? Do you have to make everything so difficult? What has Luna done to deserve this treatment from you?" I sat calmly on the sofa, pulling out documents I'd prepared earlier from under the coffee table. "These are divorce papers. I've already signed them." I slid them toward him. "I'm not asking for much in the property division. My premarital assets remain mine and I only want my half of our joint assets. You can keep the house. I'll move out soon." Ethan stared at the divorce agreement, his expression shifting from shock to fury. "This again? I told you to stop being unreasonable. Just because I missed a few calls and didn't get back in time you want a divorce? Do you really think that's the only reason?" I looked at him, my eyes filled with disappointment. "What else then? About Luna I can explain. He's just my student. There's nothing between us." He was still trying to lie. "Nothing between you?" I laughed almost to the point of tears. "Nothing, yet you took her to a sunflower field while my mother was in critical condition? Nothing, yet she freely enters your study to collect your personal items? Nothing, yet when I confronted her your first call was to question me? Ethan, stop deceiving yourself." I stood up and approached him, my gaze sharp as a knife. 3 days ago, during your so-called important meeting, you took your student Luna Vance to the sunflower fields outside town, didn't you? Ethan's face instantly drained of color. His lips moved but no words came out. Clearly Luna had told him everything, including how I discovered their trip to the sunflower field. I slowly raised my left hand and removed the ring I'd worn for 10 years from my finger. Once it symbolized an eternal promise. Now it felt like a heavy shackle. "Take your ring back." I placed it on top of the divorce papers. "We're done." Ethan looked at the ring, then at the resolve in my eyes. The anger in his expression gradually gave way to panic. He grabbed the divorce agreement from the table and tore it to shreds. "I won't agree to a divorce. Ava, just listen to my explanation." "Explanation?" I interrupted, my voice suddenly rising, carrying an almost cruel calmness. "Fine, then explain why 3 days ago, while you were having your academic exchange with your good student in the sunflower fields, I was alone at the hospital having just lost our child?" Ethan froze, his pupils contracting in disbelief as he stared at me. What did you say? Child? What child?" "Our child." I pulled out a crumpled ultrasound image and miscarriage diagnosis from my bag and threw them at his feet. 3 months along. "I was planning to surprise you. But that day I called to tell you your mother-in-law was critical and you hung up. I drove to the hospital, emotionally distraught, had a minor accident. The doctor said they couldn't save the baby." I watched as his face turned ashen and contorted, saw the shock, pain, anger, and despair flooding his eyes. "Ethan Cole, you not only missed my mother's final moments, but you also killed our child with your own hands." My voice was ice cold and clear, each word like a knife piercing his heart. "Now what else do you want to explain? Your innocence?" He staggered backward, grabbing the sofa to keep from falling. He stared intensely at the documents, then suddenly looked up at me, his gaze shattered, his voice hoarse. "No? Impossible. Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "Tell you?" I smiled bitterly. "Tell you so you could worry about your child and dying mother-in-law while on a date with your lover? Or tell you to give you another reason to get rid of this nuisance faster?" "No, Ava. It's not like that," he howled in agony like a wounded beast. "But it was too late. Everything was too late." Looking at Ethan's anguished face, I felt no satisfaction, only a bone-deep sorrow. I could see us from many years ago. On our college campus, he was the charismatic senior and I was the naive, admiring underclassman. When he pursued me, he was passionate and sincere. He would play guitar and sing love songs beneath my dormitory window, wait for hours in the rain with an umbrella, and search the entire city to find a limited edition plush toy for me. Back then his eyes were only for me, his gaze so intense it could melt me. After graduation he wanted to stay in academia, but his family strongly opposed it, wanting him to take over the family business. It was me who stood firmly by his side despite my parents' concerns, encouraging him to pursue his dreams. It was me who used my mother's connections as a senior professor to help him secure opportunities and fight against the pressure from his family. We struggled together, lived in a tiny apartment, and sometimes shared a single piece of bread to save money. Though we were poor, we were happy and full of hope for the future. He once held me and said, "Ava, when I succeed, I'll give you the best life possible. I'll never let you suffer again." 10 years had passed and he had succeeded. He became an accomplished associate professor, moved into a spacious bright house, and drove a nice car. And what about me? I became the old ball and chain he despised, betrayed, who lost her mother, lost her child, and was about to be abandoned. How ironic. Time is truly the cruelest thing. It can turn solemn vows into lies and passionate love into ice. I quickly found a new place to live and started packing. Ethan tried to stop me. With red eyes, he apologized, repeatedly admitting his mistakes and begging for another chance. But my mind was made up. Some wounds once inflicted cannot be healed. Once trust collapses, it can never be rebuilt. On moving day, Ethan wasn't home, probably at the university. I hired a moving company to load my belongings into the truck one by one. While I was busy, several young women appeared downstairs. Judging by their appearance, they looked like college students. They gathered around my moving truck, pointing and whispering. One of the bolder ones approached and asked rather rudely, "Excuse me, are you the housekeeper? We're looking for Professor Ethan." Housekeeper. Looking at the undisguised contempt and curiosity in their eyes, I instantly understood what was happening. Luna Vance was behind this again. I paused what I was doing and gave them a cold stare. "I'm not the housekeeper." "Then who are you?" "Professor Ethan's relative?" Another girl probed, her tone inquisitive. I pulled our marriage certificate from my bag and displayed it before them. "Look carefully. I'm Ethan Cole's lawful wife, Ava Miller." "And who are you? What business do you have with him?" The girls' expressions changed instantly upon seeing the marriage certificate. Some embarrassed, others in disbelief. Sorry, we didn't know," the ringleader stammered. "Senior Luna told us that Professor Ethan only had a housekeeper at home. Go back and tell Luna Vance." I tucked away the certificate, my voice ice cold, "to stop with these underhanded tactics. If she's got the courage, she should face me herself." My assertiveness intimidated them. They apologized repeatedly and scurried away. Watching them retreat, I sighed wearily. This war was far from over. After my miscarriage, I needed a follow-up appointment at the hospital. To my dismay, I crossed paths with Luna Vance in the obstetrics corridor. She looked well, chatting animatedly with a female companion. Upon seeing me, Luna's smile vanished, replaced by unconcealed hostility and provocation. "Well, if it isn't Mrs. Ava. You're here for the gynecology department too? Getting older, body failing you." She deliberately raised her voice, drawing attention from everyone around. I ignored her and walked straight ahead. She persisted, blocking my path. "What's wrong? Did I hit a nerve? Or perhaps you had some unseemly procedure and came for a checkup?" Her eyes darted to my abdomen, filled with malice. I stopped and fixed her with a cold stare. "Luna Vance, watch your mouth. You think no one knows about your dirty little games." "What have I done?" She feigned innocence. "I'm just concerned about my professor's health. Unlike some people who couldn't even keep their own baby safe." Those words, like a poisoned dagger, stabbed deep into my heart. Trembling with rage, I raised my hand to slap her again. Just then a familiar figure hurried over. Ethan. He carried a thermos and a bag of fruit, walking straight to Luna with a subtle tenderness in his voice. "Why did you come out? Didn't I tell you to wait inside? I brought cherries, your favorite." At that moment, all ambient sounds faded away. I watched as Ethan naturally handed the thermos to Luna, saw her glance smugly at me as she accepted it. So he wasn't at the hospital to accompany me for my checkup, but to visit Luna. The thermos, cherries, such a familiar scene. Once upon a time he had done the same for me. Now that tenderness and thoughtfulness belonged to another woman. My heart died completely. Ethan finally noticed me, his face flashing with awkwardness. "Ava, what are you doing here?" I stared at him, my gaze hollow, offering no response. He seemed to want to explain, reaching for my arm. "Ava, listen to me." I violently shook off his hand, using considerable force, my body trembling with anger and despair. "Don't touch me." I looked at him, then at Luna beside him, each word ringing clear in the quiet corridor. "Ethan Cole, you disgust me." With that, I turned away without another glance, straightened my back and walked away from that suffocating place. Behind me Ethan stood with a stunned rigid expression while Luna wore a triumphant yet slightly uneasy look. Long after I left Ethan remained frozen in place. A nearby nurse unable to bear the scene approached and whispered to him, "Professor Ethan, that was your wife, wasn't it? She had a DC procedure here a few days ago. Lost her baby. Poor thing. I heard it happened the day her mother was in critical condition. Her mother didn't make it either. You should be there for her." The nurse's words struck Ethan like lightning. Miscarriage. The day her mother was in critical condition. Didn't make it. All the fragmented information suddenly assembled into a complete and cruel truth. He had thought Ava was just upset because he missed the funeral. He had believed her talk of a miscarriage was just a fabrication to force him into a divorce. Until now, hearing the entire truth from a completely unrelated third party. That day, while he and Luna were laughing joyfully in the flower fields, his wife was enduring the double blow of losing both her mother and their child. And he, as her husband, her only support, had chosen to be absent, chosen to betray her. Immense shock and belated remorse engulfed him like a tidal wave. He recalled Ava's desperate cries on the phone, her exhausted figure as she handled the funeral arrangements alone, the calm yet hollow look in her eyes when she proposed divorce, the bone-chilling coldness when she shook off his hand moments ago. He had been catastrophically wrong. He hadn't just destroyed their marriage. He had personally pushed the woman he once deeply loved into an abyss. Abruptly, he shoved Luna aside and ran out of the hospital like a madman. Ethan found my new residence. He stood at the door, his once handsome face etched with exhaustion and pain, his eyes bloodshot. "Ava." His voice was hoarse, filled with remorse. "I'm sorry. I was wrong. I know I was wrong. Please give me one more chance, okay? Let's start over." I looked at him coldly through the door. "Ethan, we're finished." "No. We're not finished," he exclaimed, pounding on the door. "I know I was a jerk. I shouldn't have doubted you, shouldn't have sided with Luna. I failed you, I failed Mom, I failed our baby. Please, Ava, give me one more chance to make amends." His apologies sounded so hollow, so futile. Make amends? How exactly? By bringing my dead mother back to life? By returning my lost child? Or by magically erasing 10 years of pain? "Ethan, it's too late." My voice was emotionless, void of any fluctuation. "We can't go back." Just then an ill-timed voice broke the silence. Luna Vance had somehow tracked us down. Seeing Ethan distraught at my doorstep, she rushed over, grabbing his arm while shooting me a challenging look. "Ethan, why are you wasting time with this woman? She's already rejected you. Let's go." Ethan violently shook off her hand, revealing disgust and anger toward her for the first time. "Luna, what are you doing here? Get out." Luna seemed stunned by Ethan's treatment, momentarily frozen before breaking into tears. "Ethan, how can you treat me like this? Have you forgotten your promises to me?" Watching this absurd scene unfold, I felt nothing but irony. I closed the door, shutting out their argument and entanglement. And with that, I permanently severed all possibilities between Ethan Cole and myself. Rejected and rebuked by Ethan, Luna Vance directed all her resentment toward me. She began an obsessive campaign of revenge. She went to my former workplace, spreading vicious rumors that Ethan had abandoned me because of my inappropriate behavior and promiscuous lifestyle. She even used software to create obscene doctored photos, anonymously sending them to my colleagues and supervisors. Almost overnight, the gossip spread like wildfire. Company leadership, seeking to avoid controversy, called me in for a meeting, suggesting I resign voluntarily. I fought back with evidence to clear my name, but public opinion is a powerful force. Under tremendous pressure, the company terminated me for damaging the company's image. But the torment didn't end there. A few days later, as I returned home, several strangers ambushed me outside my apartment building. Without warning, they assaulted me with kicks and punches, hurling insults like, "This is what you get for seducing someone's husband," and "homewreckers deserve to die." I collapsed to the ground, bruised and semi-conscious. It was a neighbor who found me and called the police, resulting in my hospitalization. Lying in the hospital bed, I stared at the purple and blue bruises covering my body, feeling the throbbing pain deep in my bones, my mind completely numb. Luna Vance truly wanted me dead. Ethan learned about my hospitalization through a friend. He burst into my hospital room while I was receiving in-4 drip. Seeing my pale face and injuries, his eyes overflowed with pain and remorse. "Ava." He dropped to his knees beside my bed, clutching my hand as he sobbed uncontrollably. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. This is all my fault. I've ruined everything. He repeated his apologies, endlessly, tears splashing onto the back of my hand. In the past, seeing him like this might have softened my heart. But now, after countless wounds, my heart had hardened like iron. I calmly withdrew my hand, looking at him with eyes devoid of warmth. Ethan, please leave. No. I won't go. He shook his head stubbornly. Ava, let me take care of you, let me make it up to you. I don't need that, I interrupted, my voice tired but resolute. Ethan Cole, from now on I never want to see you again. Please leave my life, the farther the better. My finality drained all color from his face. He looked at me, his eyes filled with desperation and agony, but he understood that there was no future for us. He stood up dazed, gave me one last long look, then walked out of the hospital room, turning back several times as he left. The room finally returned to silence. I closed my eyes as a single tear rolled down my cheek. Not for him, but for myself, for the love that had long since died, and for the past that could never be reclaimed. My assault infuriated my best friend. As a resourceful media professional, she quickly uncovered evidence that Luna Vance had hired the attackers. She also compiled concrete proof of Ethan and Luna's affair, including photos of them in the flower field, explicit text messages, and video clips of Ethan caring for Luna at the hospital. My friend organized all this evidence and anonymously published it across social media platforms and local forums. The reaction was explosive. Headlines like, "Prominent Associate Professor's Affair with Young Student," "Professor Dates Mistress While Mother-in-Law Lies Dying," and "Mistress Hires Thugs to Attack Wife After Miscarriage," sparked a massive public outcry. Ethan and Luna were instantly thrust into a maelstrom of controversy. Internet users furiously condemned their shameless behavior, doxing their personal information. The university's phone lines were flooded with calls, and online forums overflowed with demands for severe punishment. Luna Vance took the brunt of the backlash, becoming universally reviled. Not only was she expelled from the university, but her reputation was irreparably destroyed. Wherever she went, people pointed and whispered. Even her family couldn't escape the shadow of her scandal. The immense pressure and public condemnation pushed Luna to the brink of a mental breakdown. She channeled all her resentment toward Ethan, blaming him for failing to protect her and allowing her to fall into such disgrace. One afternoon, she intercepted Ethan outside the university as he was headed to an investigative hearing. Right on the street, she physically attacked him. "Ethan Cole, you coward. You promised to marry me. Are you happy now that my life is ruined?" Luna screamed like a madwoman, clawing at Ethan's clothes. "Enough." Exhausted from the ongoing nightmare, Ethan shoved her away. "You brought this on yourself." "I brought this on myself?" Luna let out a shrill, desperate laugh. "If you hadn't seduced me, would I be like this?" "Ethan Cole, listen to me, I'm pregnant. It's your child. You must take responsibility." "Pregnant?" This revelation detonated like a bomb, not only shocking Ethan to his core but sending ripples of gasps through the gathering crowd. Ethan looked at Luna's face, flushed with emotion, then at the judgmental stares surrounding them. He felt the world spinning. His relationship with Luna in that moment completely unraveled, degenerating into the ugliest form of mutual accusations and hatred. Ultimately, the university announced its decision. Ethan Cole was dismissed for seriously violating professional ethics, with a formal censure added to his record. Years of dedication and career building vanished in an instant. After everything settled down, Ethan came to see me one more time. By then I had recovered and was discharged from the hospital, preparing to leave this city behind. He looked much older, his hair graying and his eyes dim, having lost all of the vibrant energy he once possessed. "Ava," he stood before me, his voice dry, "I know anything I say now is useless. But I still want to ask, is there really no chance for us anymore?" I looked at him, remembering the ceramic doll he had given me many years ago. The doll had shattered and he had spent hours meticulously gluing each piece back together, but the cracks remained forever visible. "Ethan," I said calmly, "have you ever seen a broken toy? Even if you glue it back together with the best adhesive, it can never return to its original state. The cracks will always be there, reminding you that it was once broken. What we had is like that toy. Once broken, it stays broken." He understood my meaning, and the last glimmer of hope in his face vanished. He closed his eyes in pain, nodded, and turned away, hunched over like a defeated soldier, disappearing into the crowd. Ethan's family, shamed by the enormous scandal he had caused, eventually disowned him. He lost everything: his job, his family, his reputation, his relationships. After my recovery and hospital discharge, I finalized our divorce. We met for the last time outside the Civil Affairs Bureau. Goodbye, Ethan, I said. Goodbye, Ava, he replied, his gaze complex and layered with emotion. I knew this goodbye meant we would never see each other again. I left the city that had contained 10 years of my youth, love, hate, and pain. Later I heard some news about them. Luna Vance, unable to bear the immense public pressure and Ethan's abandonment, chose to end her young, brief life. Tragic and lamentable, yet not deserving of sympathy. As for Ethan Cole, he grew increasingly reclusive and destitute. People said they often saw him lingering outside the house where we once lived, like a solitary ghost guarding long-cooled ashes day after day, immersed in endless regret. As for me, I moved to a warm coastal city in the South, found a new job, and made new friends. I began learning to love myself and enjoy life on my own. I also met a gentle, kind man who carefully nurtures my once broken heart, allowing me to feel the warmth of being loved again.